So DeAndre Hopkins started a conversation about the draft. Let's start a conversation about DeAndre Hopkins on the heels of that. I was thinking about this the other day because we didn't really talk about it, but DeAndre Hopkins is DeAndre Hopkins the most online Titan since A.J. Brown? Because there are some similarities. There are some parallels in the way that they respond to criticism, or at least in the way that they interact on social media.
Jeff every now and then.
Jeff will every now and then. But D-Hop does it to a lesser extent. It's much less extreme than how often AJ would both tweet and then delete the tweet. But Hop's out there, and he pays attention to things, and that was a big part of the conversation around his free agency when he was released from Arizona and was between the Titans and the Patriots. So DeAndre Hopkins gets out there on social media a couple of weeks ago, or I guess last week, and essentially wants to call out people who were skeptical of his abilities at an advanced age for a wide receiver. So they signed him in 2023. Fair to assume that he was lumped in with the Andre Johnson, Randy Moss, veteran wide receiver comes to the Titans at the end of their career type of player, right? We were having that discussion around DeAndre Hopkins. Julio Jones.
Yeah, just in that he was a receiver over the age of 30 that had a Hall of Fame-worthy career coming to Tennessee, and we had seen it so many times before. Although, how old was Randy when he came to Tennessee?
I think older.
2010. Moss is 47 now. I'll let someone else do the math.
You're going to do that?
It'll take me about 20 minutes, but I'll get back to you.
Well,
33?
Oh, what? We got a math whiz over here.
I saw him use his hands. It doesn't count. So, Hopkins, do you remember the Albert Breer article that came out while he was a free agent, where there's unnamed NFL executives being cited as being critical? Remember the not much on DeAndre Hopkins. He can't run anymore. That's a quote. Not much on what he has left to give. He can't run anymore. There's another quote. Still great hands. He's not going to separate. Not much of a deep threat, but very strong and makes contested catches as well as anyone else in the NFL. But he's not paying attention to the, still great. He's paying attention to the unnamed exec who said he can't run anymore. So there's our buddy Ian Hartitz at Pro Football Focus put out some highlights of DeAndre Hopkins because he's just, tape study, whatever, fantasy football purposes. And it's a really good DeAndre Hopkins play this past year in the Bengals game, one-on-one against a corner. And Hop tweets it out, or quote tweets it and says, "Remember the articles from so-called top executives saying I can't play anymore?" with the laughing emoji. And he says, "In Ran, we trust." And true. I mean, that was proven to pay dividends in 2023. Like I said, 75 catches, over 1,000 yards. He played in 17 games. He practiced. Remember how much discussion there was about how little he practices before he signed it with the Titans, and then he basically practiced all year. So he definitely had a season where he was intent on proving people wrong. Fair to assume that will continue into this season on a better roster. Nate Washington came on this radio show a couple of months ago and was very adamant about the idea of he fully expects DeAndre Hopkins to have a yet better season than he did. And that was the 7th time that Hopkins has eclipsed 1,000 yards receiving in a season in this will be 12 years for him in the NFL.
Every time he has played 16 or more games in a season, with the exception of 2016 when he had 954, every other time he's played 16 or more games, he's had 1,000 yards at least.
So the question to the room and the question to the audience, 615-737-1045 or via the live stream chat on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Would you extend DeAndre Hopkins before the season begins? Expiring contract. He is playing for just north of $13 million a year. The way the contract was structured was backloaded, so they are paying more for DeAndre Hopkins this year than they were last year. But of course, you understand how much financial flexibility, how much cap space they had to work with. DeAndre Hopkins on a $13 million average annual salary, one would call that a value. Even at his advanced age, they got certainly their money's worth out of it last season. So if the going rate for a Tyler Boyd, who's a very specific kind of a player, slot exclusive, almost, type of player. The going rate for Tyler Boyd at 30 years old is up to $4 million a year with the way that his contract is incentive-laden. How much is Hopkins worth when he will be 30? He is 32. He had a birthday this month. Where he will be 33 before the start of next season, but there is still plenty of evidence that DeAndre Hopkins is a 1B. If not the best version of DeAndre Hopkins that we've seen in his career, and it's a very impressive career, Hopkins had a very impressive season last year. Now, he was the only thing that they had save Derrick Henry. And Will Levis, brought out a better version of DeAndre Hopkins that we had seen, even though he was making plays for Tannehill too. I'm inclined to extend him before the season, even knowing he'll be 33. When I think of players who can sustain at a high rate, and we've heard DeAndre Hopkins talk about how he's taking care of his body, how much more hot yoga he's doing as a means of trying to maximize his conditioning, but also his pliability, right? Tom Brady, the whole thing, pliability, TB12, don't eat strawberries, no nightshades. All these different things. Avocado ice cream.
Love strawberries.
I know. I would hate to lose strawberries in my life. That would be a tragic loss. Strawberry cake, my favorite kind of cake. Absolutely. But I would extend him ahead of this season before seeing how this season plays out, because when I think of DeAndre Hopkins, I think of Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Not the same exact kind of player.
But in the way that they've aged.
In the way that they've aged, I think of him as being Larry Fitzgerald.
Who retired in 2020. So he was 36?
He was 37.
When he officially retired.
His final season, where he played 13 games for the Arizona Cardinals, was 2020. He was 37 years old.
And in that season, he played in 13 games, had 72 receptions. 72 targets, 54 catches, 409 yards.
Larry Fitzgerald is so ridiculous. I'm looking at his... He had a whole nother damn Hall of Fame career after he turned 32. He played in 16 games in 5 straight seasons.
That's crazy.
After the age of 32, with 3 Pro Bowl selections. His last in 17.
3,000-yard seasons in a row.
I mean, that is disgusting.
Yeah.
So, that's a high bar. I'm not saying that Hop has to play to age 37 or has to make 3 more Pro Bowls or has to, have 3 more 1,000-yard seasons. But I look at them similarly in how their traits allowed them to age better than your average wide receiver might. Now, can we account for soft tissue and all these other things? Now, soft tissue is something that you can't account for, but those things get harder as you get older. Ligaments, tendons, all that kind of stuff, strains, bumps and bruises. It's just, like every other person in life, things get harder the more you age. I still think he's got at least 2 more good seasons in him.
It's going to be really interesting going into the 2025 NFL draft, just how big of a need wide receiver will be for this team. Because even if you extend DeAndre Hopkins, you still have got to get younger there. And maybe a lot depends on what you see from Treylon Burks in 2024.
I don't think Treylon Burks should factor in too much for the DeAndre Hopkins conversation.
Right, because even if Burks has, what would be a season where Treylon Burks surpasses, if Treylon Burks has 500-something yards this season and 3 touchdowns, has he surpassed expectations for this season in how we've talked about him this summer? Not the expectations of a first-round pick, in the context of where he is on this depth chart and what we've seen from the last couple of years. How would we be talking about a 500-ish yard season from Treylon Burks?
I would be taking it as a victory lap because it means I won our bet with Slay.
Sure. But it's
not enough for him to say sight unseen, all right, you can be DeAndre Hopkins next year and we'll let him walk.
And what we've seen from the Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor offense from Cincinnati, they're going to rely really heavily on their top 3 receivers, right? That's the sample size that we have from Callahan and Cincy. And so you're looking at Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyler Boyd. It's going to be really hard for Treylon Burks. I mean, it would have to be some sort of injury situation where his playing time shoots up for him to get up to that 800-ish yard range that you're talking about with that bet with Slay. So you're talking about a lot of things that would have to happen for Treylon Burks to have a type of season that becomes, let's lock him down for the future. And he can be on the younger side of our wide receiver core. We feel good about where Treylon Burks is. He's finally lived up to that first-round pick billing. Lots going to have to happen. So if that doesn't take place, you still got to get younger at wide receiver, and you've got Calvin Ridley aging, but on a 4-year deal. Tyler Boyd's a free agent after this year. And DeAndre Hopkins, if you were to extend him at value, because you figure that number would be lower than what it is right now, then I would say yes, but still wide receiver could be a very high priority in next year's draft.
615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the conversation. Would you extend DeAndre Hopkins before the season started off of 1 year of sample size of him in a different offense? Also fair to point out. That was DeAndre Hopkins succeeding in an offense where precious few people succeeded.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind.
Kevin on the F&M Bank chat says, yes, absolutely yes. Frederick says, hell yes.
All right, let's see if Keith echoes that same sentiment on the phones. Hey, Keith.
Hey, buddy. How you doing, Buck?
Good.
Listen, you've got to extend D-Hop. I mean, the guy plays the position better, differently than anybody I've ever seen, and I'm 67 years old, been watching football since the 60s. He's dinking and diving, juking and jiving. You know he's out there talking trash, too, to the cover guy. So, he's out there figuring the angles, working, and the guy's got hands like, glue. I don't think I've ever seen it. Well, he may have missed a pass or two. I don't know. But the thing I really like about him is he's always angling for the penalty. After
he does know how to draw a penalty. He absolutely does.
I mean, I love the guy, man. You've got to extend him. And if he's taking care of himself, if he's doing hot yoga or whatever you're talking about, and he has the same or better type of year that he had last year, oh man, yeah, you got to keep D-Hop in the fold.
That's 60 seconds on the clock, Keith. We appreciate the phone call. That's why you hear the Oscars music. That's how the phone lines work. But your point is well taken. He does also help you draw those pass interference penalties. And occasionally he can prevent an interception. You remember him doing the defensive back seatbelt celebration last year a couple of times?
Yeah. And 4 drops last season, I think was the official
number? I need to look it up. Yeah, I need to look at. Well, and it depends on where you're looking. I'll find out what the Pro Football Focus number is here for you after the commercial break. But I would extend him. I would extend him before the season started. I don't need to see a season from Treylon Burks to make that decision. He has earned, if he wants to. I have no idea what that man wants to do with his life because he has a variety of different interests. You see him sitting on speaking panels at Paris Fashion Week with Joe Burrow this week, then flying to Cabo and being a part of the Titans team activities. You see him walking out of the tunnel with Morgan Wallen before the concert at Nissan Stadium. I like that he embraces the thing that I like about him as a personality. I don't know him very well after covering him for just a season, but the thing I like about him is how much he leans into the culture of wherever it is that he's at, whether it's the Titans, whether it's Nashville as a country music city, whether it's international fashion and stuff like that. Like he's a very culturally, culturally curious person.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It would seem. And I like that he leans in on wherever it is that he's at. And I think Titans fans have really appreciated it because it would be easy for you to envision in your head as a Titans fan, having come off 2 bad seasons, signing a formerly star player like DeAndre Hopkins and being like, oh, how much is he actually going to care here? How often do we hit athletes like that with, oh, he's just here for the payday. Oh, he just wants more money because then the Patriots will pay him. That's why he wants to come to the Titans. No, I think he legitimately embraces wherever he's at to his credit. And that doesn't happen every time.
And in the building too, because what was a huge factor for him in why, yes, the contract, but also what attracted him to Tennessee? Huge factor.
Oh, was it the concert?
The coach.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Mike Vrabel and their relationship. Yeah. I mean, it was very well documented. He talked about it a lot when he initially signed his introductory press conference. And now he's had to undergo a coaching change with a coach that he's not as familiar with and a totally new supporting cast around him. And he's leaned into it same way he has the rest of the culture of the city.
I'm going to make a new show rule. When we ask, what's a question that you ask that you don't actually want the answer to?
Oh, rhetorical.
Rhetorical question. When we ask, one of us, when we're talking, when we ask a rhetorical question, just go ahead and answer it. Just go ahead and answer the question instead of letting it.
That wasn't rhetorical.
Yeah, it was.
No.
You were I thought you were going to answer your own question. I paused to let you answer your own question. You looked at me looking for an answer to the question. And then
I was waiting for you to answer.
All right. Well, let's just answer our own questions around here from now on. New show rule.
How about we declare that a question is rhetorical before it is asked?
So, like, we have like a. Do we need to have a sounder? Is there like a what do you have back there would stop the proceedings?
Rhetorical question alert,
indicating that we have a rhetorical question that is about to be asked. What?
Oh, it's
put it in reverse, Terry? It's not even the good part. It's not even when he's screaming, put it in reverse, Terry.
He's grasping at straws back there.
Well, I think he had started to upload things for 4th of July week and maybe he got a little ahead of himself. Either way, last call for phone calls if you got them. So we're all in agreement. Extended before the season, no dissenting opinions.
What kind of number are we talking? 1 year?
If he's playing
8, 9?
I mean, I'd be willing to give him 10. For who he is, what he means. How many other stars do you have on your roster right now? He is a legitimate star. I would be willing to go as high as 10. And that's probably an overpay, but I think it's okay.
Would you be willing to give him the exact same number he's got this year?
13, no.
No, yeah. It can't work that way.
Not at 33. No. And I think I assume he's realistic about this. I'm sure his representation is realistic about this. There's nothing wrong with being paid what you're worth, but you also have to acknowledge that age is a legitimate factor in this. All right, last call for phone calls if you got them. NCAA analysts can coach now. Can you imagine the idea of Butch Jones, Alabama analyst, with a headset on calling plays? Apparently it's a thing. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.